So in our reading today, the followers, Cleopas and the one he was with, we're pretty sure that that was his wife, just as an aside. They weren't apostles. They were just followers. They were disciples of Jesus. They had probably followed Jesus around for a good long time, but they weren't apostles. They weren't part of that inner crowd, that inner circle. And they had come to Jerusalem, to the Passover, to see Jesus. They heard that the Messiah was coming, and they knew that this was going to be a special thing. Like this was where God was going to enter into the world. And they were so excited. And what they got was maybe some tales from some women, which at the time is not really credible, right? The women in the biblical era, they weren't able to be used as witnesses in law, so the things that they saw weren't necessarily supposed to be taken as gospel. And all they saw was a whole lot of nothing. The apostles, these men that they have come to understand, who understood Jesus, when they went looking for them to find out, what do I believe, what do I do, what happens at this point, were gone. If you remember last week, we read that they had gone into a secret room and locked the door and hid away from all the world. And Jesus had to magically teleport into the room to even get to them because they were sequestered off. So Cleopas and all the other followers are sitting there looking for Jesus, looking for God to do something spectacular and amazing, and all they get is his death and maybe an empty tomb. No leaders, no direction, a lot of letdown. They had come to find God, and when they didn't see God, they went the other direction. They were on the way. They went to Jerusalem. They were looking, and they went to the cross. They were on the crossroad, and the crossroad had nothing but death waiting for them. And so they turned and they went the other way. They went their own way because that's all that was available to them. They had prayed for the Messiah. They had wanted the Messiah. Everybody had been praying for the Messiah to come, and this was it. They'd been praying their whole life for this moment, for this exact moment where God was going to come into the world, and it was just going to be great, and it was going to be awesome. And they came in, and then they killed him. Rome won. The world won. All the powers that everything that they had been heard and told and everything that they had shut out because they knew the answer, they knew the truth, and it was Jesus. All this stuff that had been attacking them for so many years and that they'd shut out and thrown away, you know what? It was right. It won. They were in darkness. They were in the valley of darkness, and they lost it. They were in their time of trial because there was no God. There was no one to help them. And what do you do when that happens? Well, they had already prayed. They had already prayed. I'm sure that this has happened to you where you've prayed. Where you've prayed everything you've got, where you just have to pray, and you just pray even more, and you say, Lord, I need you to come into my life. I got to have your power. I need your glory because right now I can't do it. Lord, you know what I need? I need you to send someone into my life so I can get married, so I can be complete. I need you to send somebody in my life so I can stay married. I need some help with my marriage. I need a baby. Lord, why won't you bless me with that? Lord, how come you won't give me a job? I need some work. Lord, I need my promotion. I need that. Have you been to that place before where you've prayed and 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 then your prayer doesn't get answered? If you've been to that place, then you know, or maybe you're there now, that you're tempted to doubt. Because if you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed, Lord, please just take the sickness away, or please, Lord, just allow my loved one to live just a little bit longer, or even longer, Lord, I need you here, and then he doesn't answer you, then the solution is, of course, God doesn't listen. And prayer doesn't work. And then when you find yourself in a place where you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed and it doesn't work and it doesn't listen, then you have to look in the mirror, and I tell myself, I say, okay, time to man up. Time to man up, because you know what? If there's not a God that I can count on to do what I need him to do, then what is there? What can I count on? And so what we all do is the same thing. We stop being open. We close down. We put the shell out. We get cold. We get hard. We stop being generous. We stop being calm. We stop being patient. We start recoiling away from the world and put our defenses up. Everybody's got a scheme. Everybody's guilty before we even give them a chance to explain themselves. Nobody gets the benefit of the doubt because everybody's up to something. And if you've been in that place where you've lost faith, where you're just sure that God doesn't exist, then that means you're normal and human. Because that's what happens. You pray and you pray and you pray, and then God doesn't answer your prayers. The answer is God doesn't care. And that's a fine and that's a normal place to be. And we've all been there. The essence of faith is to believe when there's no reason to believe. To have faith despite everything we see. To know that I don't know all that there is to know, and that God isn't my genie up in the sky to do my bidding, and that just because I prayed and I prayed and I prayed doesn't mean that God has any reason to answer any of my prayers. And what's worse is, when you come to this place where you're doubting, and you know that God doesn't listen, and you look in the mirror, and you're trying to solve all of your questions and all your problems, soon enough you'll realize you can't. It's not possible. There's no amount of money or health insurance that is going to save my loved one from the sickness. The cancer is not going to be reverted just because I can throw money at the problem. I could throw all the money at the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. You might find yourself in a situation where you don't have any money, where you're just begging for a job that you might have some money. You might find yourself in a situation where nothing can be done because your loved one is already dead. And you're reeling from that, and you don't understand. You just want an answer, or some sign, or something to tell you. And this is exactly where all those followers, where Cleopas and his wife found themselves, in the valley of darkness. They were followers looking for hope, and Rome dashed their hope. They had such hope that God was finally going to act in their world, and then they saw it die on a cross. All their dreams, all of their plans, everything they worked for, everything that they knew, it was going to be like this, it was going to be like this, and we're just going to work and we're going to go. And they left their family, and they left their homes, and they focused, and they did everything they could, and they were in Israel, and it was going to be wonderful, and it was going to be great. And finally, God was going to do the thing that we knew that God was going to do. They were the faithful ones. They were the ones that put their arms out and said, I will be your missionary. They were the ones who were looking for God, and He died on a cross. So they turned their back on the cross, and they went their own way, because that was the only thing they had available to them. And they're walking back that long road back to, they don't even know, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Everything was leading this direction, Jerusalem and the cross, and now... and it's still on their hearts, and they end up walking with this guy, and he's a chatterbox, this one. And he won't stop talking about, hey, you know what God has in store? You know what God has planned? Did you ever hear about in the Bible where it said this? And he says, hey, look at this prophet, and hey, look at that prophet. Hey, look at how this thing's lining up with this. Isn't it interesting how these things all work together? I think God's hand is in this, and they probably should have told him to be quiet already. We're done with you and all of this mumbo-jumbo. We walked that line. We went all the way. God ain't there. But for some reason, they didn't. They've been walking the line with Jesus for so long, maybe out of habit, they still had love. They still had, for some reason, an open arm. Maybe not two of them, but at least one. This is Hebrews 1. Let mutual love continue. Despite all the things that are going on, all the reasons to close your arms, put your head down, and tell the whole world that you are not going to be a part of it, continue in love. Hebrews 13, verse 2. Don't neglect to show hospitality to strangers. For and by doing that, Some have entertained angels without knowing. And so here's this Yahoo who won't stop talking. And he keeps telling them, hey, look, God has this plan, and it works like this, and it's going to come together, and it's going to be like this. And if you just, keep looking at it this way, it's all going to work out for you. And for whatever reason, they don't shut him out. For whatever reason, they're about to go call tonight, and they say, hey, why don't you come back with us? Because the road is a dangerous place. Look, it's dark. It's getting darker. The moon was full about a week or so ago, but now it's 3/4, half full. It's getting darker. You don't want to be on the streets when it's dark. You're going to get lost. They don't have lampposts in this age. They don't have lanterns. It's not like you can keep finding your way in the dark. And by the way, in the dark, that's where all the bandits hide. That's where the people come out after you in the darkness, where they're going to hurt you or rob you or whatever it is. And let's not forget, back in that time, there were animals. There were lions still prowling around in Israel. And those big cats and all of those, they come out at night. That's when they hunt. So they said to this guy, hey, why don't you just come back with us? We're going to have some food. Sleep the night with us. There's no reason to keep going. And he does. And he enters into them upon their request. And they didn't know what they were doing. They were just showing love. But what they ended up doing was inviting Jesus back into their life. They had gone off track. They had literally gone their own way, and they stopped, and they invited Jesus back into their life. And then, without even realizing what was happening, they broke bread, and something miraculous happened in their world. Their eyes were open, and they recognized this is not just a meal. This is God. Jesus has shown up in front of us. This is a miracle. This is amazing. How can this happen? And then they looked back and they said, weren't our hearts burning the whole time while we were walking? Didn't we want to listen to what he had to say? Didn't we still have just a little bit of faith in us? And the whole time that he was telling us all the things that God was doing, we wanted to believe it still. And now we have this bread and we've seen Jesus, and they just explode with faith. They know Christ is risen and he's alive. And they stop what they're doing, and they run back to Israel. It took them an entire day to walk out to where they are, and they run back to where they came from. What about the darkness? Who cares? What about the bandits? Doesn't matter. What about the animals? Bring them on. Nothing is going to separate them from what they know is the truth, which is the cross. And they did everything they could to get back to that place because they didn't need the apostles anymore. They had seen Jesus in their life. They had recognized that they were going the wrong way, and they had the message, and they were going to bring it. And they were going to bring it to anybody who was going to listen, and even people who weren't going to listen. And maybe that would mean their death, and it would be counted as goodness that they might die for Jesus. So they went back to Jerusalem, and they gave everything they had. And I want you to recognize that that blessing that those followers of Jesus had at that day, the breaking of the bread, is the exact same blessing that we get today at this table. So that every week when we find ourselves walking in the wrong direction, we might say, Jesus, I see you, there you are. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go the wrong way. Thank you for coming into my world that I might find the right way, that I might go back, that I might recommit, and that I might dedicate myself, that I might know you and the love that you bring, that I might go back to the places that I don't want to go and be your love. We get these same blessings every week. This is why we come to church. This is why we're going to send missionaries outside of this church. This is what we have been put into this place to do. Crossroad. Fleming Island needs Crossroad so that we might be God for all whom we encounter. We might show them the light. We might break bread with them. Welcome them into our lives because Christ lives. You all will live. We will all be raised again. And so can everybody else. Amen. God is active. He is loving. He is in your life. Amen.